Good afternoon, good morning. We're so honored that you're spending your time with us. This is Elevation Mindset, and we are probably what I call the most real personal growth and development conversation I think you're going to find online. My name is Suzanne Buchanan, and I'm a career communications specialist, and I'm known for bringing people together for conversations that matter. You'll find this is a pretty open forum. Michael and I have thought through about the arc of the year that we're presenting to you. We show up here every month on Saturday mornings for us in EST time zone. And we really talk about a different personal growth and development topic each month for us to focus on. We encourage you to join our LinkedIn group as well, where we post articles and comments that kind of guide us to this. We ask that as we get going, you put your computers on mute or your Zoom through your phone on mute for us. And we will, though, open the floor for dialogue. So don't go anywhere, please. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Michael Danklefs. I'm up here in the Northeast part of the United States. And Suzanne and I have been doing this beginning last year. So we really talked about some pretty high level ideas last year, things like vision and boundaries, gifts and gratitude. And this year we're going a little bit deeper. So we really want to have kind of these other conversations where we started off with things like grace and beliefs for this year. And I think that each of these is actually growing on each other. And we really wanted to kind of dig into these things that are less talked about in a way that is authentically us, is connected with who we are, but also encouraging others to have that conversation with us. So we do have a few things that we're going to be going through here and talking about, but we'd love to see you interacting with us in the chat, and we will be bringing some people on if they have any questions or some insights that they want to bring near the end of this. So today we're really talking about identity, which is this really wide concept, but we really kind of wanted to, pick it apart and really ask ourselves, are we becoming everything that we were meant to be, not what we're told to be? Mm-hmm. So Suzanne, how's that showing up for you?
Oof, guys, I'm just warning you, I'm so passionate about this subject because for those of you who follow that personal growth and development, there's lots of influencers out there. There's so many self-help books, right? And a lot of them focus on things like habits and your mindset, but we like to go to the root. And I can't think of anything that's more base root oriented than identity. So, to start off with, what do you guys think? Is there a core you versus a programmed you? What do you think about that? Are we merely a result of our circumstances and what happens to us? Or is there something that we came with, that we were born with, that maybe we grew into, but it's an inherently part of us? Oh, yes, I see in our comments, I feel that there are dual identities. Very interesting, and I'd love to go into that. When we think about identity, initially on the surface level, we think about, I am a mother, I'm a student, I am a daughter, I am a husband, I'm a boyfriend, I'm an employee, or I'm Black, I'm white, I'm Hispanic. We think of all of those, quote, identities. And while those are important, we're taking you a step inside. We always go beyond skin deep and go to the root. And I think that once we're there, we find we have more in common. And some of the divisive identities, or the identities that have been turned into something divisive, fall away. I think we can all come together on something like this as well. So when we think about identity, we think about, are we actually choosing who we are, or are we running on a program? Michael, what do you think about that?
Well, I certainly think that, at least for me, that I came into this world a particular way, but I know that through being raised and the condition that comes from parents and schools and what have you, that there's kind of these layers that were put upon that. So for me, it's been this discovery of pulling the layers back, of finding what was programmed from the outside, and maybe just observing that and being aware of it, and taking a deeper dive into it, and then decide at that point if that is related to the core of who I am. But I certainly think that some of this, I think that there is this core foundation that when we do identity work, when we do shadow work, when we do, kind of the LifeBook process and our beliefs and all that kind of stuff, I think a lot of it is uncovering what's underneath all the programming. I think
Michael,
it's
sorry,
unfolding it.
That was kind of insider terminology. Can you unpack what those things are for people who are not knee deep in the personal growth world? Shadowing, what are these things?
So each of those is a different tool, a different exploration of finding out who we are. It's a discovery process. So if it's looking at those parts of ourselves that we've actually disowned, which is a fair amount of what I've heard shadow work is about and what I'm actually practicing, going through the LifeBook process is about opening up and discovering in various categories of your life, not only what you want, but why you want it, and what are your beliefs that actually support it. So I mean, each of these is a different lever. It applies different leverage so we can really discover and possibly then reform and recreate what our identity is. So just because we get a lump of clay doesn't mean it has to stay that lump of clay. We've got the pieces, the building blocks to work with. Now, what do we actually build from it? What is the monument that we're building to our legacy?
So is that like, who was it? Was it one of the sculptors that chipped away the pieces to reveal the sculpture within?
Yeah, it was Michelangelo. The sculpture is already
Michelangelo.
complete within the marble block. Before I start my work, it is already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material.
How many of you guys feel like part of your life is deciding what you're not? This happens, right? And when you think about it, they say that 50% of your thoughts are repeated and pre-programmed. These are your autonomic systems and your habits and routines. Like when you get in a car and you begin the process to drive, you are so used to this process that it's automatic. Or when you think of someone you want to call, you don't even know the phone number, but when your fingers go to your phone, it knows exactly what to do. So if 50% or more of your thoughts are repeats, how in control are you? And are you making decisions that are defining who you are? Or are you on automatic pilot on your program? See, what we're getting at is that difference, that distance between who you are now and who you want to be. And I know that you're all here because you're still growing. And when we talk about the concept of identity, this is crucial to that. Who are you at your core? Why are you here? These are the questions that we ask. And maybe we don't ask them often enough. Or some of us don't ask them ever. And then we wonder why we ended up wherever we are. But this is about being intentional about our path, being intentional, not just about our actions and thoughts, but every step along the way. So, Michael, you are the process and accountability person on this team. Do you have a routine process where you check in with your identity?
So yes, there's definitely a couple of things that I do around that. So some of it's actually solo and some of it's with a larger group. So some of those processes is part of that LifeBook process that I mentioned. And I know that several of the people that are here with us are LifeBookers. And there's a process certainly to build the book, and actually build that LifeBook that you have in your life.
For
which is
those
the
who are
beginning.
not in LifeBook, can you actually offer what that is?
Absolutely. So the LifeBook process is, it begins with building the book, which is looking at those 12 categories, which starts off with personal attributes, things like physical and intellectual and emotional, moves into relationships, then goes into career and finance, and then your quality of life, and then an overall life vision. And it's really kind of taking all the pieces of your life apart to clean them up, to then put them back together. And that is probably one of the things that, yes, like I said, that's the beginning of that. For me, the process then goes to that next stage. It's actually then what steps do you need to take in order to create that vision for your life that you want to have, that you actually want to live into, that you want to build into. But then there's a third phase as well. And that's, I think, where this kind of identity shifting can happen, is being held accountable to taking the steps that are going to move you there. So if that's actually somebody that you meet with on a regular basis, if that's a online group that you're part of, where you're actually checking in on commitments and actually having people that you report to, if you will, for accountability. And sometimes it's those people that challenge your statements, challenge your questions, challenge your progress, to say, is this the best version that you can bring? So
I love that point. It's super powerful, guys. We are always told to surround ourselves with people who support us. And I get what that means. Like, we certainly don't want to surround ourselves with people who are abusive or destructive. But, and this is a distinction that I love. And I've heard, for those of you who don't know who Ed Milet is, he's an influencer in the personal growth space. And he said, you need to have people in your life close to you who don't accept this version of you, who don't accept you for who you are, because they see more, because they know you have more. And I love that, Michael, you pointed out that accountability of having people also check in with like the goals and what are your habits and practices, how much progress have you made this week on this goal. But also, I love having people in your life that are like, you can do more, and that challenge you guys. Lots of people have grown a little bit soft in that regard. And I think that's a really important part that many people miss. Thank you, Michael. I love that.
So, and what I like about that process, because as we're talking about kind of, what are your pre-programmed state versus that which you've been conditioned for, is it's also someone, for me, in those small circles that I'm in, it's the people who actually see through all of my masks, all of my projections, all of they observe that, and they are willing to push me to that aspired identity rather than the past identity or even the current one. It's a matter of, holding the space and for it to be safe enough to take that mask off, and the mask underneath that, and the mask underneath that, so they can act. So I feel in this space where I can really be vulnerable with people. And it's not a normal space in this world that I've run into where that's even possible. So it's a matter of finding that inner circle, if you will, that holds that space that's safe, but at the same time is challenging you by pushing you up, not
Yeah.
challenging you by pushing you down. It's a very different mindset.
I love that. And guys, do you see what we're going at? We're going at a community of people who they see you, they see where you've been, but they see how far you can go. And they're willing to call you out on your shit because they know there's no time like the present to get going and to become everything you were meant to be. This is powerful stuff. I love that. And when we are, whether you have somebody to call you out or whether you're really honest with yourself and you look in the mirror and you see, where am I not stepping up into my full identity? It's important to step back and think, okay, am I operating out of a past identity? Or am I operating under the identity of the person I know I'm meant to be? We're super lazy beings. It's so easy for us to fall into that over 50% of automatic thinking and habits. But not all of our habits serve us. And as Joe Dispenza and many others have said, neurons that fire together wire together. And so it's so much easier for us to take that well-worn path of acting who we are in our previous identity instead of the person we know we're meant to be. Are you, and we're going to go into that a little bit when we talk about, have you guys ever tried to change your identity? Have you ever tried to make a serious transition between one phase of your life and another phase? So much so that you realize this is not the person I'm meant to be.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that starts with, you had mentioned earlier, kind of that I am statements. And I think that's some of the toughest parts for us to practice. And when we talk about, if half of your thoughts are actually repeated, that is your programming in some ways coming out. So if someone says something like, I am a smoker and I'm trying to smoke, you've just identified and said some of the most powerful words in the English language of I am this. So
Yes.
Will you ever stop smoking if you identify as a smoker? Same thing would be true for most addictions. But the one that Suzanne brought up when we were talking about this and bringing this forward is, if you say I'm a struggling artist versus I'm an award-winning artist, how does that change how you're going to show up? If, for me, I'm actually moving from a job to working in a business, being an employee versus being a business owner are also two different identities. It's a different set of skills, a different mindset, and it takes that look and that change of vocabulary. Someone I spoke with, like I said, having safe people around you challenged me whenever I said my day job. Well, is that your day job, or is it the job you're doing until you move into coaching, move into what the next phase of your life is?
Mm-hmm.
So on the Elevate Your Best podcast, we talk about, your words being powerful. And this is where we start projecting out to the universe how we see ourselves. I'm always broke. That's an identity thing that we're actually putting out to the universe.
Yeah, making money is hard. Oh, guys, don't condemn yourself. Do you get it? Your thoughts create that neural pathway, not just your words, your thoughts even. So take it back, right? Like take a step back. If those words come out of your mouth, they're already thoughts, guys. And those thoughts, they speak to who you believe you are. When you are, The one that I had difficulty with when Michael and I were talking about this was AA, which has been a lifesaver for so many. But in my heart, I refuse to condemn anyone as an alcoholic because I believe they can be completely free, because I have a powerful belief in us, in our potential, for sure. We have so many labels, and guys, it's okay if they don't fit, then it's not who you are, and that's okay. I am among, I guess, many. I can't be labeled. I'm beyond and above, and I know you are too. What are some other identities, Michael?
So one of the other ones that came up that I thought was something I've observed is, as an example, I tend to, for most of the clients that I work with, I tend to work with men. And it's because some of the tools that I've worked with up to this point have been more effective when I've worked with men. And this whole masculine, feminine idea, a man versus a woman, is one of those other identity things. So I've had to kind of change that to, I work from a masculine perspective, which is a little bit different. And the thing that was the outlier for me was, especially as we have so many more women now moving into leadership positions, is when someone is considered a powerful woman seems to be when they're acting more like a powerful man. And I don't consider those comparable. Is if you're coming from a place of directness and fortitude and that kind of construct versus compassionate and being able to see the bigger picture, I see both as being extremely valuable. I don't want to judge someone who's coming into a leadership position, someone that I may report to or someone that I may look to because of their gender, because they're acting more like a man or more like a woman. It's more a matter of what is the value you are bringing to the world.
Yeah, and I think we see this more, guys, when somebody has to fight for their identity. That woman in that corporate position has probably come through, a boys' club. And sometimes to prove ourselves, we take on the identity of another that's not really ourselves. And we see that happening. What are some other examples of fighting for identity, Michael, that you think of?
So there's a couple of things that actually kind of came to mind when we were digging this up. It's, someone who's actually would normally be seen in one area, but they're actually working to grow into another. I mean, one of the ones that came to mind was someone like Eminem, who's a white rapper in an industry that tends not to be white people who can actually, spin their story the way that they do. And it's that identity conflict. And it's Dewey, once again, like Suzanne laid out at the beginning, this, you can label yourself as a race, but are you a fantastic artist and musician? Is that based on your identity? I also know a couple of people in my life as well, more so in my daughter's life, who, maybe you can speak to this more, Suzanne, but someone who they're born into this world with a man's body, but they feel like they're a woman internally. The way that they interact with the world, the way that they think is feminine. So that idea of being transgendered and standing up, it's not something that it clicks in your head of, hey, I'm going to be a woman today. It's a process. It's an unfolding. It is fighting for that identity and then having to go through a process and being judged the whole way through.
Yeah, guys, I have a deep experience working with many transgender community members in my work with the United States Department of Justice, where I was a mediator and I mediated discrimination conflict across the East Coast of the United States. And I had such, especially the Atlanta community, beautiful community of people. And there are people who were, for lack of a better word, who woke up in the wrong skin, who woke up in the wrong body, and forever have embarked upon a process of alignment with who they feel they really are. And how many of us have woken up in a circumstance or found ourselves in a circumstance where actions and people that are surrounding us, you think, this is not who I am. I'm better than this. Or I'm different than this. These are not my tribe. Oh, they get off by cutting down other people and making fun of people. I want to lift them up. Or, they're doing other things, just like sitting around and, with their free time, and perhaps you're hell-bent on personal growth and becoming the best person you can be. Maybe your focus is legacy, but the people around you, they don't really have those dreams. So all of us have engaged and embark upon this process of finding our tribe and realigning what's deep inside of us with the world on the outside. This is powerful stuff.
There's also this other thing too that we've kind of alluded to so far. It's also, do our decisions determine who we are all the time for the rest of your life? Kind of that question of identity of, can I be a felon and a great man at the same time? Because both of those could be labels that are applied to me. Depends on what we want to stand for, depends on what we want to fight for. And failures in our choices lead us to lessons. And hopefully for those failures that you actually run into, you learn the first time. Otherwise, those lessons get bigger and bigger and bigger until you finally get it.
Right, guys? Have you ever repeated a mistake until you finally figured it out? We know. We know. I'm currently watching someone I love dearly, more than anything. Karma has got him so bad, guys. He has made the same mistakes repeatedly. And when we do, guys, this is your sign. Why are we making those same decisions? Why? Because those bad decisions are actually in alignment with who we believe we are, our identity. I am not worthy of being loved. I am always going to be fat. There's so many. And all of us, like Michael's thought on, can he be a felon and yet an amazing man? We are not stuck with who we are. We are not stuck with who we are. We can be anything we choose to be. And I've had that too. I have those decisions daily. For those of you who don't know me, I have a rare and potentially fatal blood disease. And I honestly don't know what my life expectancy will be. But I know that that is not my primary identity. Even though I have a world of people, guys, a lot of people, especially growing up, right? Our family's influence, our doctor's influence. You can't do that. You're diseased. You can't move away from here. Your doctors are here. You'll die. You can't do this. You'll get sick. There's so many people that love us that truly don't see who we are. And guys, it's not their fault. This is an internal journey, right? This is an internal journey. You know what the universe, what God, what Allah, what Buddha has created within you. Whatever you want to call that creative force, you know when you are destined for more. You know, and it's okay. And I want to say you're right. You are. You are. And so it's okay to choose your identity, to choose who you want to be. It's not who the world thinks you are. It's what you know and feel that comes from here. You feel me? I know you do. I can feel you from here. So how many of you out there have ever tried to shift your identity? Thanks, love. How many? Put in the chat, or even, you know what? Speak up, unmute, right? Hopefully, for those of us in the personal growth and development space who are actually trying to chart our trajectory, we feel it all the time, don't we? We are consistently in motion. So how? Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I like that kind of as a segue to kind of where we want to go next.
Yeah.
Is we are always in motion, whether we're standing still, the earth is still turning, we're always in motion. The question is, are we actually steering where we go?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
And that's the big question, you know. And as we kind of have these questions come up, if we have this identity crisis, or we look at the results that we've created in our life and we're not happy with the results we get, then it's a matter of then starting the process of finding tools, finding people, finding resources in order to move into who we believe we truly are. And there's, as Suzanne mentioned earlier, there is so many books and programs and anything out there. It's a matter of finding the right tool, the right message, the right delivery facility, the right vehicle that's actually going to get you there. I know for me, that was partly a men's team in a space that was safe for me to be 100% myself. It was also LifeBook. It was Mind Valley for personal development and doing the practice. But each of those, it's great to read the books. It's great to observe the programs. But you have to take action towards them. You need to start using it. And that I think is the idea of shelf help. Buying the book isn't enough. You've got to read it. And so many of these personal development books are not just something you can read. There's actually questions to answer. There's actions to take, experimenting to do in your own life, and actually making it into your reality. So I'm curious, for those who are here, what are the tools that you have used up to this point to help you discover, uncover, and change your identity? Because the tools and the actions that we take, I think, is where we define ourselves as we're shifting to become a new person. I've seen so many people challenge of, well, I don't have time to do that. But it always reminds me of this. I think it was a Far Side comic that I saw, and it's the Native Americans who were using bow and arrow to actually try to ward off the oncoming attack. And there's somebody over there with a machine gun and saying, I've got this new tool for you. Like, we don't have time to learn that. It's a more efficient tool to do the job that you're doing. But until we slow down and take stock of what we're doing and see what other tools are out there that are more efficient, more readily able for us to shift to where we want to go, I think that is one of the best tools that we can do, is to slow down and take stock, figure out where we want to go, and then ask for help on what we're going to do. It looks like we have at least, I don't want to butcher your name. Is it Chrissy's? for LifeBook and mentors. Awesome. So, and looks like BP's has moved a lot to change identities and growth. But I'm curious, what has been the biggest lever for you? What, or maybe I should ask the question a different way, is what was that thing that actually opened everything up to a new way of being, that it made everything else possible? Because when we have this barrier in front of us of this is all I'm ever going to be, that identity of I'm never going to go anywhere because this happened, or this is where I grew up, or this was my experience in school, or my parents were that. What was that thing that opened you up to it? Like I said, for me, it was on a men's team where it was people who were being raw, they were being authentic, they were actually sharing what they're challenged with in this unfiltered way that gave me permission to be me.
You know, Michael, this is a theme I'm seeing in I work with a lot of small business entrepreneurs who go into business to change lives. And I get the feeling that so many of us are waiting for permission. Permission to be who we believe we were meant to be. Permission to change. And it's difficult, but leave everything in the dust. Permission to finally realize our potential. Definitely. Oof.
Yeah, Christie's, I was in the same boat as well, is that I also too became a single dad. And like my family was my world. There wasn't anything else other than that. We had, when I was married, it was 5 kids between the two of us. There was no social life. There was no things that were outside of that. And because I had forgotten to cultivate me in that. And yes, family is very important. It's still very important to me. But whenever you now find yourself having to carry the whole load by yourself, and having to rebuilding is kind of, I think, my focus lately, is rebuilding from that catastrophe. And sometimes that catastrophe is self-inflicted, and sometimes it's the circumstances that we're in. So thank you for sharing that with us, Christine, because I know that that's tough.
Yeah,
my wife now grew up, my wife now was a single mom. Even though she was married, in between, she still was, in essence, raising her kids by herself.
Honey, you're capable of everything. You've got this, and you're not alone. You're not alone. You know, I call myself like a specialist in the comeback, because I've had so many times where I've been knocked down so hard with my blood disease, where, you know, I've woken up with my family had flown in for my funeral. I had a 3% chance of living. And that was one of like the near-death experiences I've had. And so each time I have to find who I am, absent of everything I knew to be true. We even think of, guess what, guys, the body we're in is part of our identity. What happens when that fails? So this is a subject that's so passionate for me, because I have seen people make life-changing transitions to realize their potential. And we know that's why you're here, and we know that's possible for you. So we want you to have a practice to really spend time to think about, who are you? Is this who you were meant to be? And have that time, like Michael said, to check in with yourself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So just, it's one of the things that I know is talked about in so many different ways and different places, and there's so many different methods of doing it. But at least for me, one of the disciplines that I'm working in my life is this idea of meditation, which is to me calming of the mind, to allow myself to hear what's underneath all the noise, the chatter, the monkeys in my head. And there's so many different ways to approach that, and so many different methods, much like most of the personal growth environment is. There's lots of options, and it's a matter of finding the right one that works for you. For me, the best one has been the 6-phase meditation, because it is 6 different areas of my life that I want to move through and go beyond and expand. But I know that there's so many other different ways of doing that.
Yeah.
So it's this, that whole mind body experience is a way for us to then once again take stock, to actually do inventory sometimes as we kind of see the emotions and the thoughts and the paradigms that come up. It's a way for us to, as we see it, we can unpack it, clean up the pieces, and put the pieces back together. I kind of, for me, that's kind of the theme is, it's like an engine or a computer, or maybe even like we have a water pump for our dogs. And every once in a while, you got to take that thing apart and get all the gunk out of it and put it back together, because that's how it actually stays clean. That's how it actually stays the best for them, is taking it apart, cleaning up all the edges, and putting it back together. And meditation is how I do that for me. And sometimes that then leads into me writing about what comes up for me, or doing a review of how that week went, how that month went, how that day went. So I'm curious, what is the discovery tools that are working for you? I've got a couple of other that I want to go through, but I'm curious if you can type in the chat some of the other ways that we can work on this, discover and shift our identity and take inventory.
I love that, Kevin. Thank you. He said Stephen Hawking is also a beautiful example of our ability to thrive when even our body is strongly failing. For sure, guys, we can transcend any challenge. And, while I have stuff always going on, it hasn't stopped me. So, oh yes, journaling, gratitude journal. That's a really popular one. Beautiful. And you guys are welcome to come live and talk with us. We welcome you. What are some of the tools that help you? And are you struggling with any of them? New skill building, writing, practicing gratitude, affirmations of new future identity. And one tool that I think isn't talked about enough, guys, is action. Is taking bold steps that require faith in something you may not feel yet, that you maybe have a hard time even seeing. Action. Take that step.
Kevin, did you have something to share with us?
Please.
So yeah, it's exactly what I wanted to share. John Butcher said something that really deeply resonated with me about income and outcome. And that's something that really shifted, probably the one single thing that shifted the most my identity and my mindset. About it is one of the worst traps in personal development, that you will feed on material, learning, and it feels so good, but you won't ever actionate on that, and that's a really naughty trap. So yeah, we have to put that in action. To become wiser is beautiful. But if you don't do nothing with that newfound knowledge, it's useless. So we have to put ourselves in action, definitely.
Beautiful. And those are words after my heart, guys. We can build up this empire in here. Actualize it, guys. Put it into motion. Put that faith into action and take those steps to realize your potential. It is frightening sometimes. It can be terrifying the bigger the step. Michael and I have kind of had this discussion before, and he's a comfort guy. He'll tell you about baby steps, and I'm like, jump off the cliff, just jump off the cliff. So, that's why we do well together, because we present both sides of it, the yin and the yang. But for sure, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
And Christine, did you have something for us? Okay. Well, thank you for coming up on camera with us and sharing the stage with us.
Yes, we love it. And guys, are there any transitions you're having trouble making? Can you think of anything that you're having trouble transitioning, and you're trying to, it's like putting on different clothes, right? That they feel awkward, they feel starchy, they're uncomfortable at first, they're not worn in, and it's not always easy.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Sorry, guys, for being that much on the stage, but nobody is moving, so I will do. So I just recently realized something. So you might have help about that. I realized something that was for me like the traumatic event in my life, like the root of all evil that happened at 8 years old. Probably isn't the root, because I've learned recently that most of the really meaningful things, patterns, are crafted between 0 and 7. So I'm like, okay, I have to dig deeper, but I don't know how. Any leads to be able to travel, and I could go like to do hypnosis sessions and find therapists and stuff, but I'm really low on money right now. I'd rather not go that path. So you have some low income tips you could give?
So Kevin, for that, just because the norm is 0 to 7 doesn't mean that that's not the root of your evil. So be okay with that possibly being what the challenge is, and unpack and unfold that is where I would start. And like I said, as like a low income solution, like I said, if you go through the 6-phase meditation, the 3rd phase of that is forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, the biggest challenge in the forgiveness wasn't forgiving other people. Was actually forgiving me.
Yeah.
And that kind of work really kind of opens it up, and if that is a door at 8 years old to something earlier, you've got to get through the door first. So maybe start with that. Is there was a lesson that you took from that, and until you learn and incorporate and actualize that lesson, you may not have access to the things that are before.
That's really interesting. You're talking about the 6-phase meditation. I'm right now in the process of cleaning. So just real quick, it's about bullying, and it was a group of person. So I'm cleaning every single person. So I tried first as a group. It didn't really work. So I'm just getting every single person, every single item on the list, and all right. That's your turn. That's your turn. So these days I'm in the process of doing that. So it's really interesting. You're coming with that. I'm exactly doing that these days. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And maybe it's your turn.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going to go to next. Is that once you've actually gone through and forgiven that process, which isn't forgetting, it's reducing the charge of it. Is for me then like I said, the toughest part is forgiving myself for allowing that to change the trend, change the trajectory of my life, because it may be a subconscious or an unconscious choice, but it's still allowing it to define where we are. And that took a while for me to unpack.
If I could just add something, somebody gave me that great tip that is definitely going with what you just said. I love that idea to thank yourself, your former self, your past self, for the opportunity to grow. I never thought about that. Forgiving is a thing, but to thank yourself for the opportunity, like it gave me all the tools, all the pain I could transform now to be on the road of becoming a life coach in the future. And so I'm really using that experience. So I really have good reasons to thank that past self, but I didn't thought about that. I didn't do it on purpose. So I guess it's kind of the next step. So I hope it can help some other people.
Yeah. And do you know what that does? When you think yourself, you are stepping outside of an identity and you're looking at a previous identity. So you're distancing from a past. And so that's a powerful tool, guys, because that allows you to move on into a new healed identity without actually going around and up and down 5 mountains. It's just a beautiful hack. So just wanted to comment on that. Michael, did you see the comments?
I did. So I know that Chrisisi said that you're kind of stalling at the habit stage for LifeBook, which is a challenge. It is. Even one of the things that I'm reading right now is called The One Thing. And a lot of what they talk about in that is focus on one habit at a time. Get that under control, and then until it becomes a discipline, and then move on to the next habit. But that's one thing that I've read. My experience has been like, I'm in an accountability group, and one of the people in the accountability group brought up an application on our phone called Habit Share, where not only do we have the habits, but we also then share them with each other, so we know how well everyone is doing with their habits. And then we check in on each other. So as an example, I was taking my blood pressure, and one of the people read it and said, you need to go see a doctor. And it's that support. So did you have something to add to that, Chrissy?
I was just going to say that, I mean, see, I'm thinking of this as part of my identity, the typical me, and that is that I found accountability group, and I said, oh, can I join you? And then, a week passes, and now I can't even find them again. I've lost them on LifeBook. I never joined the accountability group. So I need an accountability group to join an accountability group. So now I need to find one again, and I don't even know how to do that. So anyway.
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to help people with is when we're having trouble with habits, we are activating from an identity that is not the aspired identity. You are reinforcing you are not there yet. And that's the drag. That's the drag, because when you are activating from that new identity, and it's not new and outside of your body, it's the you you were meant to be. So it really is you, guys. Believe, believe, believe. When you're activating from that new identity, it simply becomes, what are the activities? What are the habits that I do from my new self, from this identity? Because that will not be the drag. That will be absolutely pulling yourself into alignment with who you are, not who you want to be, who you are. Do you see the gap there? And anytime it feels like a struggle, you think, whatever the identity is, say it out loud. What would an award-winning author do when they wake up in the morning? Because that's who I am. Whatever that is, aspired identity is, that's where you operate from. And any struggle on habits usually comes from not being there. I see BP's mentioned James Clear on Atomic Habits, fantastic book as well. There are, and you guys know the deal with books is simply environment. You might think it's information, but you already know. It's environment, it's immersion. It's surrounding yourself with the right people, with the right thoughts, so that you can fully step into with ease, with grace, because it's who you are. So the reading and the self-help is simply immersion. It's culture. It's coming here. It's showing up on Saturday. It's being around like-minded, like-hearted, like-souled people who are hell-bent on living the best life they can be and becoming who they're meant to be. So yes to the books, yes to the podcast, yes to accountability groups, because that's culture, that's immersion, and that's that little ding on your phone, right? Which are triggers. But ultimately, I'm not a huge fan of external triggers, because that means you're still not operating from who you are. So there's the push and pull thing there. And so ultimately where we want you to end up is a place where you wake up and you master those habits, not because you've climbed a huge mountain to get there, but because you've woken up and realized that's who you are. That's what you deserve. This is the life you were born to live. Awesome, guys.
And if we come from a LifeBook perspective for those habits, it's a matter of, is your life vision enrolling, exciting, empowering enough that I'm on my way to get there, not when I get there, I will. It's knowing that you're on your way to get there, where it's a place to come, as Suzanne was talking about, a place to come from. Is a person who lives that life in my life vision. What do they do when they wake up? What do they do in their afternoon? What do they do in their evening? What do they do when they go to bed? Because it's a very different perspective, right? I mean, goal setting is a great tool. I love the funnel of focus. I love the sacred habits, but it's a place to come from, not a place to get to. Someone who is in this identity. I'm a world-class coach. What does a world-class coach do?
Yeah.
I'm the best father on the planet. How do I show up for my daughter as the best father on the planet? Using that as that's it's this anchor in a way that it's actually what's pulling me towards it. It's that finding that core of who I'm moving to be.
As Mando says, this is the way. Beautiful. Guys, we want to open it up to you. What else is going on with identity? How can we help and serve you? And we do this once a month, guys. We'd love to see you here. Your faces make my day, make my weekend.
Well, thank you everyone for showing up for this. We really appreciate you bringing your energy here. It actually helps us raise ours when you show up, and we love supporting you and receiving that support in return. So as I said so far, and Suzanne has been repeating, as we've talked about grace, beliefs, and identity over the last 3 months. The next couple are going to be a little more deep. We're talking about faith next month. Commitment, which is one of my big ones as well, and then grit after that. So we do have the schedule laid out for the rest of the year on these deep conversations, and we'd love to have you join us for those. And we will be posting this up on YouTube and in the LifeBook platform as well. So if you have any comments on ways we can make this better or takeaways from that, please engage with that. It lets us know how we can actually elevate our Elevate Summits.
Yes.
So-
And if you guys are on LinkedIn, join our LinkedIn group. We would love to have you, where we post comments and articles that kind of take us in this direction. We always want to be of value and of service. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, beautiful souls. Go have an amazing
I'll go ahead and
rest of
send
the
that link to the Elevation Mindset group here in the chat.
Yes.
And
Awesome.
it'll also be on LinkedIn too. So B Peace was asking about that. So thank you for the engagement. We, like Suzanne said, we'd love to serve you, and we're looking forward to this deeper conversation about faith next month. And we'll talk to you
Awesome.
then.
Have a great weekend. And
Thank you.
thank you so much, guys.